concussion protocol after telling doctors yesterday that he was dealing with symptoms. Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel said he could not pinpoint a moment in Sunday's game where Tua might have been injured. His status for a critical Week 17 matchup with the Patriots in Foxborough is now in doubt.
I care very deeply about each and every player. I take that serious. So, I just want him to get healthy and have peace of mind in that regard. It's about the human being and making sure he's squared away.
Now, Tua previously entered the concussion protocol after Miami's Week 4 loss to Cincinnati. He missed the team's next 2 games after that. He had taken a hard hit 4 days prior in a win over Buffalo, where he stayed in the game after being evaluated. All of this, if you remember back in Week 4, led to the NFL actually making changes to the concussion protocol. However, there's still what they're saying happened here is that he did not show symptoms during the game. When we talked to the team doctors yesterday morning, they found he had symptoms. They put him into the protocol. Regardless of what happened or when, this is a recurring issue for Tua. So what does it mean? I mean, in the short term, like it would seem unlikely that they get him on the field for Sunday, right?
Yeah, right there. As you mentioned, this is his 3rd reported concussion of the season. So again, there's going to be protocols, but given the fact that it's his 3rd concussion, I would be surprised if he played this week.
So, I mean, we're talking about a young quarterback here who's in his 3rd year. He'll be extension eligible at the end of this season. Big picture, beyond this season, you're the Dolphins, the Dolphins front office. You're looking at his future there, contract situation. Like, how much does this factor into his long-term future?
It all factors in. And look, he's a really good player. He's had a great year, but durability has been a concern. It was a concern at Alabama, and obviously it's a concern now. Certainly, I would want to keep him. Now, in terms of how much do we pay him, I think the average per year, you could probably work out something reasonable. In terms of the guarantees, if I'm the Dolphins or any team with a player like this, you're going to have to hedge your bet, and you have to think about bringing in another quarterback. I don't think it's worked out well with Teddy Bridgewater so far, so maybe it's a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo, maybe it's a guy like Mike White, but you're going to need depth at that position because Tua is a very productive player, but durability is a big concern.
That is the off-season discussion for Miami, but they're still in the season. They have 2 games left. Yeah. They're trying to hold on to a playoff spot, Bart Scott. They have to beat the Patriots in Foxborough this weekend to keep that alive. What do you think about this situation?
Listen, I thought it was going to be a tough out to go up into Gillette in the weather conditions, knowing how Bill can muddy up a game. They've lost 2 disappointing games in non-Patriot fashion. I thought it was going to be a tough fight. I said this before. I didn't think that Miami was going to be a playoff team because I feel like the field is kind of caught up with them. Those anticipation throws, you see teams setting traps in zone and man, being able to turn the football over because now they have data on what they like to do out of personnels, and eventually they catch up with them. And Tua has had a great year, but I think it's pause for concern in his long-term future. I don't think they make it to the postseason, and if they don't make it to the postseason with all that they've invested, going out getting Bradley Chubb, making a big deal for Tyreek Hill, they have to consider bringing somebody else in. That's always been the concern with Tua. He's slight, and now he has issues with his head. Kind of brings up Troy Aikman, forced to retire because of concussions. I don't know if you can put a guy out there and say you care about a player's safety and health if they've had 3 concussions in 1 year, because we know it's not about the initial concussion. It's about the ability for the brain to continue to heal. Once you get one, it's so much easier to get another one.
And that's, the concussion protocol and the NFLPA work together on that. They're constantly adjusting it to keep up with what's going on. But in terms of the football of it, if Tua can't play this weekend, what does that do to the Dolphins' playoff chances?
Well, I mean, you're talking about a totally different, Teddy Bridgewater is not Tua Tagovailoa. Right. The way they operate, the RPO game, all those type of things that the Miami Dolphins like to do offensively, that's not really Teddy Bridgewater's game. So it alters things from that aspect. See, Tua gets the ball out of his hands really quick, very accurate. That's not Teddy Bridgewater's game. So they're going up in New England. New England has a very good defense.
Yeah.
And so when you don't have Tua, that's a huge hit for this Miami Dolphins offense that like to operate in a high octane, kind of system.
But Teddy Two Gloves hasn't been healthy either. Remember in the Jets game, he was out in the first quarter, then you go to the 3rd quarterback. So with a defense like New England that can attack the quarterback and make it a rough day, you worry about the concerns about losing your backup. And if is Tua going to be ready for the closing game against the Jets? That's the big question.
That's the interesting part of the game is the Miami defense could really shoulder the load. And look, we know New England struggled throwing the ball themselves, so looks like it could be a low-scoring game.
And the Dolphins come in having already lost 4 in a row even before this news. So obviously desperately in need of a win and may not be at full strength against their division rival. News out of Denver yesterday where the Broncos fired first-year head coach Nathaniel Hackett. The move comes after the 4-11 start and Sunday's 51-14 loss to the Rams. Last night on Monday Night Countdown, our Steve Young talked about what this move means for Russell Wilson.
In the end, Coach Hackett's gone. But Russell Wilson, at some point, you need to let us know that you're still you, that you can still be a decent or above average football player in the NFL. And that's why the most shocking thing in the NFL this year, to me, is the play of Russell Wilson. It makes no sense to me.
We knew that the coach was going to get the blame here, right? He didn't sign the mega contract extension right before the season for $250 million and all that.
Yeah.
Is he at fault for what's going on here, D. Wood?
Well, I mean, the coach, listen, I always say it's easier to get rid of the coach than it is a player. The player got a mega contract, but listen, man, like, Russell Wilson is cooked. And I'm just being honest. I'm being real here. Think about this. Like, Russell Wilson, like, you don't pay somebody $250 million to look this bad. It's not like this offense is a foreign language to Russell Wilson. He runs a version of the West Coast offense. Same thing that Russell Wilson had in Seattle. And so, like, I don't understand how you could fall off a cliff like that. I said it before. You don't just deal away franchise quarterback. Like, Pete Carroll knew all along, watching Russell Wilson day after day, practice, games, he knew what he had, and he was willing to deal him away anyway. That was a red flag, and then you hand Russell Wilson $250 million? Like, I'm sorry, like, the Denver Broncos got suckered in this whole thing by the Seattle Seahawks.
That's the thing. Seattle didn't, when they knew he was going to need a contract extension, they decided they didn't want to go down that road again with him, so they get this haul of draft picks and players for Russell Wilson. Now they have Denver's first-round pick. Denver's in a terrible situation, Mike T. Like, what's the fix here?
Yeah, a couple things. You go out, you got to get an offensive-minded head coach. So Eric Bieniemy, Sean Steichen from Philadelphia. Obviously, Sean Payton's going to be out there. Two other names I would think about are Brian Schottenheimer and Darrell Bevell as offensive coordinators because they've had success with Russell Wilson. And then D. Wood, this is going to sound familiar. Offensive line, offensive line, offensive line. You got a first-round pick from Miami for Bradley Chubb. Go get another offensive lineman because he's going to be there for the next couple of years. Guys, his dead money for the next 2 years, if they cut him, is $107 million next year and about $85 the year after. So Russell Wilson's there. Everything about this situation is the job description is fix Russell Wilson.
Well, what accountability does the general manager have? Because
why is it always the GM's fault?
Exactly, because he's the one who bought the groceries. And he bought some rotten, dry, overaged avocado. And at some point, he has to take accountability as well, right? Because you can't do anything to Russell Wilson. I mean, and you have to figure out, I think really who's coming out like a rose is Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll, and what they've been able to build in Seattle. And I think this is more about Pete Carroll's legacy than it is about anything. The fact that he has Geno Smith playing at such a high level, I just think it illuminates what a great coach and a great leader